Pacers beat the Jazz. That counts as a win. It was not pretty. They were down quite a bit in the first half, but the second half was incredible. Myles Turner was such a leader, and the Pacers are getting close to the playoffs. All coming today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Saturday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, much to get to from Pacers Jazz, a game that was the tale of two halves, and the Pacers' good half was so much better than their bad half was bad, and they win again, and they are approaching clinching a seed, a side of the bracket, or whatever you want to call it, whatever you're rooting for. They're very close to it. 140 points on the scoreboard for the Pacers, and yet the game did not feel like a dominant win. Myles Turner is going to get a ton of praise today. He was terrific. The block party he started carried over to everybody, and the minutes distribution in this game. Prep for the playoffs, a big storyline from this one to me. I want to start with just the game flow because it kind of seeps into everything that became a story, right? Myles Turner was awesome. We're going to talk about him later. He was particularly awesome in the third quarter, which was a tide turning point of the game. And that's funny to say because a big point I have about this game is it didn't feel like a good win for the Pacers. They won by 28. They smoked the Jazz, and it did not feel like a good win to anyone who watched it because they were downright bad for parts of the first half, right? The Pacers did not take their first lead until early in the third quarter. Right, they were trailing against this version of the Utah Jazz, Colin Sexton and a bunch of young dudes, for almost 30 minutes. Right, they were struggling to take a lead on this team. They were down 13 late in the second quarter. The close of the first half was actually a very important stretch for the Pacers to keep this one manageable going into the break. But not much time left in that second quarter. It was 44-57 Jazz, 3:51 to go. The Pacers closed the half very strong. Aaron Nesmith hit a pair of threes that were massive, and then the Pacers got enough points the rest of the way to have it as a 2-point game at halftime, and they were way better in the second half. Way better. But that first half was rough, and everybody watching the game or thinking about the game said, oh, here's the Pacers doing that thing they do again. They're never good against these teams, and they're not compared to their best level. Their second half, they scored 83 points, and the Jazz scored 53. They just kicked their tails. The fourth quarter alone was 42-18 Pacers, right? A dominant 12-minute stretch of basketball. That's about as good as it gets. And so the reason that game flow is all relevant is the order of events really changes how you think of this game. And what I mean by that is, had the Pacers been up 83-53 at halftime, like if their second half was the first half of this game, and Myles Turner had this amazing first quarter, and Siakam followed suit, and their fourth quarter was great, everybody would have thought, oh, normal win. Great job by the Pacers to cruise through. But the flow of the game makes it not feel that way. And that's why I'm going to talk about this a lot more rosy than the game felt, right? I had moments this game where I thought, man, they might actually lose. They're playing really rough. If I ever just straight up shared my notes via screenshots, I would just like, oh, Johnny Juzang's hot with a bunch of question marks. Utah's living in the paint early. The Jazz are 22nd in three-point percentage and first in league in turnover rate. Yet they have one turnover after the first quarter and are shooting pretty good from three. This is super weird. Like, it was just rough. They weren't really doing anything well. But it would not have felt that way if the game was flipped. And so this podcast is going to sound rosier than the game was. It just is. Because their second half was that good. And the final result was that good. And they did claw back in late in the second quarter, which is probably the most important stretch of the game in retrospect. But to me, the way that this one really exploded for the Pacers and set the tone was the way Myles Turner and in turn Tyrese Haliburton, but the way Myles Turner played in the third quarter of this game. The Pacers were behind at halftime, and they weren't like defending the paint terribly, but it wasn't good. The Jazz were getting deep into the paint a lot. That doesn't mean they were scoring at the paint a lot. And the Pacers really needed to combat that in any way, right? Whether it was Turner's rim protection, whether it was better ball stopping on the perimeter, whether it was blowing up actions quicker, whatever they needed to do, they needed to figure something out, because that was why I felt like, oh, maybe the Jazz can actually do this. Like, this isn't really their style, but the way they're playing works. Like, this could actually be a thing that works. In the second half, Myles Turner was the solution. He blew up everything that the Jazz tried to put on. So let's talk about Myles Turner's third quarter stats. Just the third quarter, reminder. Myles Turner had 11 points, normal, 3 rebounds, and 4 blocks in one quarter of the game. Myles Turner had 4 blocks. The Jazz finished this entire 2.5-hour basketball game in Gainbridge Fieldhouse with 1 block as a team. They blocked 1 shot the entire game. Congrats to Kyle Filipowski for his block. Myles Turner had 4 in the third quarter on his way to an excellent blocks night, and that actually seeped over the whole team. He also had 3 boards and 11 points. 3 for 6 shooting, 6 free throw attempts. He was really getting going on pick and rolls with Haliburton. They were really concerned, the Jazz, at rushing guys to Haliburton, and so he was getting off the ball for passes. 7 assists in that quarter for Tyrese Haliburton and 12 points. That's a good stat line for a whole game for a lot of players. So a lot of this was set up offensively for Turner by the way Haliburton was being defended. It made the paint open, but he rolled into that space and finished well, and he made 2 threes. The basketball gods steered those in thanks to his work on the defensive end. But that defensive effort turned the game around for the Pacers. They were finally stringing together stops in a way they could not do for any of the game. I mean, they gave up over 80 points through 3. They gave up 35 points even in the third quarter, right? The Jazz hit 5 threes. They got 4 free throws up. They were not turning the ball over at all and won that quarter. Like, they were finding enough ways to do stuff, but they weren't doing as well as they were in the first half. And there was clearly a shifting sign of defensive growth coming for the Pacers. And it started with Turner's awesome play in that period. And that carried into the fourth for Turner and the rest of the team. In the fourth quarter, Turner had a couple more nice defensive plays, and the blocks got everywhere else. Ben Shepherd had 2 blocks. Excuse me, I'm looking at steals. I was like, wait, what? Jarris Walker had a block. Johnny Furphy had a block. Pascal Siakam had a monster block. Jarris's was pretty sweet too. And so all of a sudden, the Jazz are just not able to score on the inside at all. In the fourth quarter, the Jazz made 4 shots. Total. They made 3 twos. The Pacers defense was awesome in the fourth quarter, and I thought it was because of the tone set by Myles Turner and how it changed the Jazz's plan of attack in a way that really just crushed them late in this game, and everybody up their level in the fourth quarter. But Turner was the catalyst for all of it, and then Siakam played one of his best defensive games of the season. That bled into the fourth quarter. Jarris's block was emphatic. It was impressive. And in the end, what that culminated with for the Pacers, in the NBA this season, entering Friday, there had been 3 games total where a team had 15 blocks. The Pistons had 15 against the Nets on March 1st. The Mavericks had 18 against the Rockets on February 2nd. And the Suns had 15 against this same Jazz team in an overtime game, by the way. They needed an extra period on February 7th. The Pacers got 17 blocks in this game. So that is the most against the Jazz in a game this season. It passes that Suns game. And the second most any team has had in one game all season. And blocks are the same as any stop, right? In theory, they count as just a defensive win. But the way the Jazz's transition defense was poor in this game and the way the Pacers were focused on running in the second half as their offensive process kind of evolved, they did a really nice job of turning a lot of those blocks into quick, rapid chances that the young Jazz were not ready for. And so their big solution to the second half was all that defense. And it came from, I thought at least, Myles Turner's play finally reaching everybody else. He had this intensity in the third quarter that was so needed for the team, and it didn't feel like it really got to anyone else until pretty late in the third quarter when finally stuff clicked for the Pacers. They went up 5. That's not impressive against the Jazz, but they couldn't get a 5-point lead for much of the game. Their first lead by more than one possession came with like 2 minutes left in the third quarter, and finally when other people followed Turner's lead, the Pacers just cruised. They dominated that fourth quarter. And so the stat that Kyle Taylor tweeted out, that's correct, that really shows what that impact of all those blocks and defense was, is from 0 to 4 feet, right at the basket, the Jazz were 6 for 16 in this game, 37.5% right at the rim. They did better in like the mid and floater range, not well, below 50%, but better. They made 1 long 2, but they were so bad at the rim. And they were trying to get there so much. They did in the first quarter a lot more than they did the rest of the game. Collier was trying, Sexton was trying, Kente George was trying. They really wanted to get there, but they couldn't score there. They had to do something else. And I think Myles Turner was a huge part of that, and that really messed up the Jazz. For reference, the Pacers were 10 for 10, 0 to 4 feet. They made every shot they took from that same distance. They made more shots on fewer attempts, and they did well from 4 to 14 feet, that floater range as well. So to me, that is the story of how the Pacers won this game. Yes, that is a rosy way of putting it because they were bad in the first half. It's crazy to call this a defensive win when you couldn't stop the Jazz for 20 minutes, but they did. They figured out how, and they really, really needed to. A couple other guys who I thought were needed on defense. One was Ben Shepherd. He defended pretty well in this game, had a ton of good hustle plays to start the fourth quarter. I was surprised they went to him. He played more than Jarris Walker in this game. I think basically everybody's surprised by that. I will talk about why I think they chose the rotation pattern they did later, even though I wouldn't have done it the same way. Jarris Walker also, I thought, had some nice defensive plays in this game. He had a nice game in general. Again, we'll talk about him later. But he got beat once, so did Shepherd. But largely they were good on the defensive end. Nesmith was not a standout defender, but Nembhard was, to the extent that anyone was really awesome on either Sexton or Collier in this game. Collier 5 for 15 in this one. Sexton goes 8 for 15. Sexton was getting by a lot of guys on his way to 27 points, but stopping those guys was tough. I thought Nesmith had a few times he got beat that I found perplexing, even though he largely played a very good game. I did not notice as many out of Nembhard. And so those defensive shifts finally came to a head. Fourth quarter, the Pacers allowed 18 points to put this one away. Their offense was spectacular in the second half. It's crazy to call this a defensive one, but I thought their defense got them into their offense. And so in the second half, you see the Pacers shooting 67% for a whole half, including 46% from deep with only 3 turnovers. That's going to work very well. 80 points in a half is crazy. It's hard to fathom. And yet that's what the Pacers hit. And it all started thanks to Myles Turner. He got a podium game. He talked about the Pacers waking up and their needed intensity and their chase for home court and how that was very motivating. Huge for the Pacers. They are now 2 wins away from securing that they will be in the 4-5 series, assuming they do not catch the Knicks with their 2 wins. And then 3 wins away from locking up home court. I'm using that distinction because I think being in the 4-5 is still very good, even if you aren't the 4 as the Pacers, but that still matters. And I'm also using that as a springboard to say the Pistons did play tonight because I said I'm going to do every podcast I do. I will talk about games that matter to the Pacers. The Pistons played tonight. They won in Toronto without Cade Cunningham. They keep finding ways to do that. I don't think the Pacers are, thrilled or care about that result, but I think they would have been happier if the Pistons lost. That said, the Cavs did win. And if, for those of you who care, why do the Pacers care about the Cavs? Because if the Cavs secure the East 1 seed as soon as possible, their chances of trying against the Pacers reduce in those 2 late season games of teams playing against each other. Perhaps the Cavs are playing for the 1 overall seed in the NBA Finals, but they're 2 games behind the Thunder, who lost. The Rockets beat the Thunder. So in some ways, the Cavs win, Thunder loss is not good for the Pacers, and that maybe the Cavs push for Finals home court. On the other hand, the Cavs could secure the East 1 seed a little bit sooner. We'll see where all that shakes out at the end of the season. But certainly I would think the very last game of the season could be a Cavs team with very little to play for. We'll see what their actual motivations end up being. And then your rooting slate tonight for the Pacers is, assuming you would like the Pacers to be the 4 seed instead of the 3, you're rooting for the Knicks over the Hawks. If you want the Pacers to get the 3 seed, you're thinking about the opposite. And then the Pistons play the Grizzlies in Detroit, and the Bucks play the Heat in Miami. That is pick your poison. Who do you want to play in the first round? Root for that team to win and the opposite team to lose. But for the Pacers securing their home court advantage, rooting against both is, of course, a sound way to look at things. So much more to get to from this game, but I talked about the playoff stuff, and so I wanted to do that. The minutes. People had questions about the minutes. And a lot of other players who stepped up, all coming on this weekend, Locked On Pacers. Before we get to any of that, though, let's talk about game time. There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute MLB showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup. Finding the best seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until you find Game Time. Game Time makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you see the total cost up front. No surprises at checkout. Many love using Game Time for their last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you're into. They've got it. You can grab last minute seats for upcoming Pacers games. They only have 2 more road games this season. You can save big with their zone deals. They have peace of mind they can offer you on Game Time because with the seat views before you buy, there are no surprise fees and a lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence, and their lowest price guarantee means you never worry about overpaying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that code is LOCKDOWNNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make Locked On Jazz your second listen. The Jazz running out the clock to the end of the season. I don't think they'll be bummed about a loss, though. They are pushing towards the top spot in the inverse standings. They probably already have the top odds, or tied for top odds, because it's the same for the top 4 teams locked up. But that having that best floor still matters. There were a lot of injured Jazz players in this game. Ooh. I can't believe who was playing for the Jazz, and I can't believe the Pacers struggled with them for as long as they did. But they did, in fact, get it done to get it across the finish line. Tons of questions about the rotation, and I think the answer actually revealed itself in a weird way. So here's why people were confused, including me, to be clear. First quarter, bench group comes in, and Ben Shepherd's in, and Jarace Walker is not. And Bennedict Mathurin returned for this game. That's of note. We'll get to that. And everybody assumed, and by everybody, I mean me and I assume most other people, thought that the bench would be Mathurin, Bryant, McConnell, Top, and Walker, because Jarace Walker's been playing well and got put into spots instead of Ben Shepherd of late. Instead, Jarace Walker plays 9 seconds in the first quarter, and Ben Shepherd plays 2.5 minutes. And then throughout the game, they both kind of had sporadic minutes here and there. They were both on the floor to start the second quarter, and they both played about the same amount of time in that quarter. Ben Shepherd actually hit a huge three in the second quarter, and by the time the game ended, the Pacers played both of them a decent amount. 13.5 minutes for Walker, 20.5 minutes for Shepherd. And they both had fine stat lines: 3 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals for Shepherd, 5.7 boards, 3 assists for Walker. I thought Walker was a little better between the two in this game, especially on a per minute basis, but that was like the best Shepherd's played in a while. He made a 3. His hustle plays to start the fourth quarter between offensive rebounds, getting loose balls, and just passing, getting off of it were huge juice moments, because I know the Pacers won by 28, but it was close to start the fourth. It really was. Regardless of that, they both played. I think everybody thought, what's going on? How has Shepherd jumped Walker? Why are they playing 11? What is going on here? Well, then the fourth quarter happened, and I think this was the most revealing thing that could have come. And some of this was that it was a blowout, but even before that, barely any minutes for starters in the fourth quarter. Turner plays 450. Siakam plays 337. Nesmith plays 209. Nembhard and Haliburton, 0 seconds. They don't touch the floor in that fourth quarter. TJ McConnell played a lot. Ben Shepherd played the whole fourth. No one else played more than 7.5 minutes in that fourth quarter. 7 minutes and 45 seconds, excuse me. So that made me go, why did they ride the bench so much? Because, again, I know they won by 28, but if you were there, you watched it, it was close to start the fourth. Like, the Pacers didn't get a solid, for sure going to win feeling until probably 5 minutes to go when they were up 16 or so. So what actually happened? How did that become the case? Well, Haliburton didn't play, and they rolled, and Nembhard didn't play, and they rolled. I think they realized when they were playing well, they could steal minutes management, if I had to guess or read their minds. And I know that they're constantly trying to manage minutes. That's what Rick Carlisle said when I asked him about it after the game. But that's how this read to me, is they're playing the Utah Jazz, who are not a very good team right now with who's available for them. And they realized they could play 11 guys, and that would keep minutes down for everybody. Siakam played under 29 minutes. Haliburton played under 28 minutes. Less than 20 for Nesmith, 27.5 for Turner, 26.5 for Nembhard. And then some good minutes for bench players, with 5 bench players playing at least 13.5 minutes, and all of them having at least decent nights. I think that is why they did it. And so we will see. If they go to Denver and they play only 10 and Jarace Walker doesn't play, I'll find that to be a huge mistake. And this comes from someone, by the way. A lot of you are rolling your eyes. This comes from somebody. I was a Shepherd should be playing over Walker guy until Shepherd missed a gazillion threes in the middle of March. And then Walker came into that opportunity and played very well and continues to play very well, right? He has earned the minutes he has now. He should continue to play right now unless he starts to struggle. So if Shepherd plays over him, because Mathurin's back, right? That's why there's more guys in the rotation. If Shepherd plays over him, I would find that to be a mistake. We will see if they play 10 in Denver or 10 against the Wizards next week or something, and what that actually reveals about their priorities here, because I think going 11 today and how they structured the rotation was more about, managing fatigue, like Pat Bowen and I talked about yesterday. If I had to guess, mostly guess, but their rotation was a little different today because of Mathurin's return. Ben Mathurin, really funky stat line from him. If you just saw 4 for 11, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, you'd be like, that's not the most efficient night, but he did some stuff. He still had 20 points on 11 shots because Ben Mathurin just ate the free throw line. 16 free throw attempts for Ben Mathurin. 8 was the next highest by any Pacer, which came from Myles Turner. The Jazz took 21 free throws. Ben Mathurin took 16. He was a beast getting to the foul line. A ton of those 16 came in the second half, 10 of them to be exact. He was awesome in the fourth quarter. As I talked about the Pacers, it was closer. They still had to put it away. Mathurin gets 12 points in that quarter with 3 made shots and 6 made free throws. He came in and looked pretty normal right away. Wouldn't talk a ton about the calf after the game, but shake off some games missed, miss a few shots, and then get back into playing and do Ben Mathurin stuff. That's good stuff for the Pacers. His 20 points were their most by a guard and their third leading scorer in this game. And so a lot of his stats are inflated is the wrong word because the game was so competitive, but a lot of his stats are reflective of his one strong quarter, but that quarter was very strong and he really recovered from a slower than usual Ben Mathurin start. Did not make any threes in this game, but they needed him to be better, and he was. Speaking of better, TJ McConnell was awesome. This is the version that they had last year when they had the best bench in the league for so long. 6 for 7 from the field on those typical TJ McConnell. I'm getting to my spot. I'm fading. I'm scoring shots. 7 assists to his 2 turnovers with a steal and a block and 4 rebounds. He was super good in this game. This is the perfect game to play McConnell a good amount of minutes. He almost reached 20. Keontae George, Isaiah Collier, Colin Sexton, all fine players. None of them are particularly tall, and the Jazz almost always have 2 of them on the floor at the same time right now, right? So that's a game where you can play McConnell and feel comfortable about what you're getting from him because, one, he's a pesky defender, but he sometimes is giving up size. He's not giving up size in this game, and he can get off his shot a little easier with that extra height, and he did a good job of that in this game, took advantage of that. A ton of stabilizing moments from him where he's just hit a shot at a time that the Pacers really needed it. Nembhard did that early in the first quarter as well, and once the guards got going for the Pacers, it was over. It was over. So really nice Mathurin return. I thought TJ McConnell was quite good. The both of the second-year guys were decent. We talked about Haliburton. We talked about Turner. Siakam's fourth. Okay, the rest of the starters all played well. Nesmith, Nembhard, and Siakam stat-wise. Siakam's fourth quarter was massive, right? That's where his defense came alive, and Carlisle called it a good defensive performance from him. He had 7 points aboard, an assist, and a steal, and a block, and plus 10 in the fourth. Hit a huge corner 3 for the Pacers, and then he did all that in 3.5 minutes. I thought he was really good. In the fourth quarter, Nesmith was 5 for 7, made both of his threes. They were both very timely on his way to 12 points. And Andrew Nembhard was also 5 for 7 with 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and just 1 turnover on his way to 11 points. It sounds so weird to say everybody chipped in, did their part, and helped them get a win because they were not good to start this game. I bet they had some tough moments of frustration, at halftime, even only being down 2 of like, let's go, let's get it in gear. But they did have an awesome second half. They did score 83 points across the last 2 frames. They did get the win. They got some Furphy time. They got some Ray J. Dennis and Tony Bradley time. And they walk out of Gamebridge with a 3-0 homestand at a key time of their season. Now, the weirdest thing ever, they just go to Denver for a game. I was trying to think back to the farthest west. I remember the Pacers going for a one-off game. OKC, Houston. I think they had one in Dallas once. All the way to Denver and back, and for one game is just weird. Just so weird. That's going to be tough for the Pacers. The Nuggets are going to be hungry. They lost to Golden State tonight, or last night for you listening to this. After that game, especially if the Pacers win it, the odds would go way up. It's very likely that every other Pacers game the rest of the season, until the conference finals basically, is in the Midwest. So a chance for them to get one more travel trip in, try to beat Joker, see where they're at, and then come back home for the home stretch, which is 3 at home before a trip to Cleveland. If they win 2 of those last 5, they will be in the 4 or 5 because the Bucks and Pistons play each other twice. And if they win 3, they'll get home court. And we'll be tracking it all right here on Locked On Pacers. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as you enjoy every episode and Pacers Jazz itself. You can find me on Twitter at Tony R. East, and I'm at the same handle on Blue Sky. This podcast is at Locked On Pacers on Twitter. That's where you can see episode descriptions and see some short videos from every single episode, things of that sorts. Back Sunday night talking Pacers Nuggets. If it's a heavily favored game for either the Pacers or the Nuggets, we'll make the third segment standings watch then, and then roll right into a new week here of Locked On Pacers. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you very soon.